Welcome to the Church Stuff Podcast. I am joined in the studio by the man, the myth, the legend, Jay Gray. How you doing, brother?
Doing great, man. How are you?
I'm good, man. I'm good.
Good.
You had a good day today? Good old Sunday?
Always good. Sundays are always good, and the weather's nice, so I'm enjoying it.
It is. Can you imagine? It was, a week and a half ago? We were in snow?
I think it was. You're
Something
right.
like that. We were just snow, and then it was like 60.
If you can live in Missouri, you can live anywhere, right? So
That's all it is, man. It wasn't even that long ago. It was like -4.
Yeah.
And it was just, okay, now it's 60, and I'm wearing a hoodie, and I kind of regret it today.
Well, you know what? Just hold on to it, because it's supposed to be 80 on Tuesday and then 40 on Wednesday. So get ready for that 40-degree change.
It's just a cycle.
That's
all it is. We experience all four elements, all four seasons in a month.
We're good.
But, I mean, hey, it makes us tough.
It does.
It
does.
It's... No, I appreciate you coming in. I'm going to ask you some kind of personal questions, just kind of like so people get to know who you are. You want to talk about like where you've come from, like how you grew up in church, things like that. Like, how did you get started in church?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, obviously, I've been in church my whole life. I was born into it, so I just grew up really remembering more than anything being in Fenton. That's where when mom and dad were up there, youth pastoring, associate pastoring, things of that nature, doing like evangelism. That's what I remember vaguely when I was younger. Mm-hmm. So just being around with when they had their youth group, I was always kind of running around as that kid that just liked to be involved with all of it. Just always being in service, always, if a service went long, I'd be the one sleeping under the pew, be on stage when dad needed to use me, as it still goes even to this day, and I'm 40. So, man, it's just always been a part of it, from music to drama to, man, you name it, youth. I've always had some kind of hand in something. So it's pretty much been my whole life, man.
Yeah, just like from the get-go.
Yeah,
so,
pretty much.
Because you have a unique experience in that not a lot of people listening would have, is like you were like born in the church, like
basically,
essentially, like right there in the pew. Yeah, like it was done. Like I came into church when I was like 15, so I had something a little different. But you've had this unique experience to where it's like from birth you've been like, here's church.
Totally.
And as a kid, how did that like? How did you work with that? Because I know that it always had its ups and downs.
It does. When you're a pastor's kid, as we're always referred to, PKs. Man, it just, I don't know, sometimes you feel like you got to be something more than others, because you want to really try to be, let's just be honest, be better and try not to mess up, try to walk on a wire, because to me, that's how a lot of people looked at you. Yeah. You had to always you were always in a spotlight, whether you wanted to be or not. Mm-hmm. And you felt like you couldn't mess up. So when you would always hear about if you did something wrong, growing up in that old school way, you just felt like that God was like a punishing God. Mm. And you really had to learn to come out of that, because obviously that's not how he is. But, that's how my sister and I felt like that's how it was. Mm. So it was interesting growing up in it. Sometimes I'd always wondered what it'd been like to not be in ministry, or like if we were just kind of in I don't want to say like a normal family. I don't want to come across that way, but it's like growing up, maybe dad doing construction or mom working somewhere else, but we were just right in ministry. So it was always a part of that. And so you just always had to feel like I want to do my best in everything, but I don't want to mess up. Mm-hmm. So I've always actually taken on that persona as a perfectionist too. So. Right.
Because it almost feels like, I don't have the experience of it, but I've seen it, like you're carrying other people's bags.
Absolutely. That's a good way to put it.
Like someone is making you live up to their standard. Mm-hmm. And it's very humanistic, because we do look at people like, oh, you're in a position of power, your family's in a position of power, therefore you are. Sure. And if you mess up, we're going to look at that tenfold. Right. Versus my kid messes up, well, my kid's just a run-of-the-mill kid. Right. He's not a pastor's kid. Oh, heaven forbid. And the clasping of pearls.
Totally. Well, and it's funny you say that, because it made me think, I never wanted to bring shame to my family name either, mm-hmm. no matter where we were, whether it be as I'm growing up knowing right and wrong, of how the effects of making a good decision excels things, but making a bad decision can bring something you feel like against your own family, or they're high up in the church, why would they do that or say that, or look what they did. Mm-hmm. And so it was it's hard to live by. People just don't even realize. Even into my 40s, you still get that.
Yeah.
Because my parents are obviously still pastors, and being a part of that church that they're pastoring, it's you still kind of carry that around no matter what.
Yeah, it has a lot to, and not to put it out there to anybody else, but like the last name mentality. Like you hear a last name or a family name, and you're just like, oh, you're a part of that family.
Absolutely.
And it's either you're treated like royalty or like the other end.
But isn't that true for, like, say if you like sports or you watch the Queen of England? I mean, it doesn't matter what family name it is. Whenever it's said, whether it's social status, high or lower, people know a certain name.
Yeah.
And in the Pentecostal world, Gray is known, but I mean, you just have to hold on to that a little more. And I just felt like you always had to be careful in what you did.
Yeah.
So
and I think that's a good piece of advice for anybody, because somebody's always watching, whether it's, and you never know it. I mean, you obviously felt it more because you grew up as a pastor's kid.
Right.
But I don't care if you're a pastor's kid or you're a janitor at a church. You got to be careful because somebody's always watching you.
Absolutely.
I'm down here. I was down here today with the younger kids just for a little bit. And like, I had to watch, how I'm acting and interacting with buddies because I want these kids to like, I want to see like the respectfulness and like things like that. I want to help out in any way that I can. I don't want to set a bad example.
Right,
and it's always on in my head of like, I don't want to set a bad example for kids because I know they're watching. Because when I was a kid, I was always watching.
That's true. That's a good point, man. Because like you said, you came up when you were like 15. I remember seeing you around and even seeing others around. I've seen so many people come and go. And you want to set a good example of like, my gosh, was I good around them? Was I not good around them? I mean, I carry that everywhere I go.
Are they happy that I'm not there anymore or they're not around me or do they miss me? Like, is it
totally,
and not to be like, egotistical on my end. Like I'm going to be me regardless.
Right.
But I'm hoping my me is a good person that leaves a good impact.
Absolutely.
Even though I know I'm human and I don't. I know that there are sometimes you don't.
right.
But like, is this person better off having known me or should they have never met me?
Sure. That's a good point because that made me also think of when I wasn't involved in church, then they'd wonder why. Yeah. So it's like I either completely had to be, but then if I wanted to take a step back and just kind of refresh myself and enjoy God, if it comes across, but then they would go, well, why you're a pastor's kid though? Like, why aren't you running a program? Why aren't you running a church?
Why aren't you?
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Thank you.
Why aren't you? You see a need, you should fill it.
That's right.
Like if you see, like, and I've had people come up to me. I'm like, I don't care if you have a weird idea or not. If you got a weird idea, bring it to me. If you got any idea, but also be prepared to help out with that. Don't just give it and like hand it off to that's somebody else's job to do.
That's exactly right.
Like you also have a calling on your life. Every single one of us can be a pillar. Single one of us can do something. Don't pawn it off on someone else what you were called to do.
Oh gosh, no. That's right. Especially when you're the one that brought it forth to an individual and that individual maybe had no clue what you're talking about. That means it was put on your heart for a reason.
Well, and not everybody sees everything.
Right.
No one's got 360 vision. So you can't see, well, other than God, but you can't always see if there's a need. Like there's needs in the church right now. I have no idea what they are.
Right.
Because they aren't for me to help. But there are needs that I'm seeing in the church that I can help with.
That's true, man.
I should.
Absolutely.
That's why it's a church. It's a body. It's arms and legs and hands and feet. It's all of that. So it does irk me when somebody just brings something and they're like, you should get on that. Okay.
Dude, I've heard it my whole life, man.
Yeah.
Heard it my whole life and being my whole life, and people don't know me and I'm married. I have 4 kids and we say we have the bookends. We have a daughter who's 18, then we got a 13-year-old son, 10-year-old son, and then a 7-year-old son. So we've got them at both ends of the spectrum and want to raise them in church. But my wife and I had agreed that we will not force them into doing things that they don't want to do. And to clarify, it's not that I was, but it was different back then. It is now.
Yeah.
And we love that our kids go to church. They still love it, but we live it in front of them behind closed doors. And that's the biggest thing for us. And that was our biggest example is make sure you know who God is in your home, because if you don't know who God is in your home, anybody can fake it in church.
Yeah.
But when you're living it for real at home, it's much easier and more authentic when people see it in church for real.
It isn't fooling anybody if it's only for 2 hours a week.
That's right.
You got to live it at home. You got to live it on the freeway. You got to live it at your job.
That's right.
Like
at school, all of it. Yeah.
Because you said you're father of 4. I am not a father, so I have 30 to 40 kids a week for like an hour or two.
But still,
it's a lot, but it's nothing compared to like having a house full of kids. You're responsible for them, their safety, making sure they eat, financially, their future, all of that. Like that's a big pressure.
Absolutely.
And I like what you just said about not forcing them, because I've seen, I went to the church school here, and I've seen church kids grow up here who now want nothing to do with the church because they were forced into it.
Absolutely.
And because their family wasn't living it at home. But heaven forbid if you miss a Sunday or a Wednesday.
Oh, come on. Now you're preaching, brother.
Yeah. Like I saw it firsthand. And now those people want nothing to do with church. No. They want nothing to do with me because I'm still here. And like, I didn't do this to you.
Right.
Like I want to be your friend. They're like, nope, I don't want nothing to do with you. No. I'm like, I understand.
It's more in the home.
Yeah.
And to be honest, your kids are going to know who you are if you're going to be fake in church and they go, wait a minute, you don't act like this at home.
Yep.
My kids know exactly who my wife and I are.
Right.
At church and at home. We're the same person.
Yeah.
And that's how we're like, hey, we're going to go to church today, or one time we might go, we're going to take a week off. And people are like, where were you guys at? Well, we spent time with my family.
Yeah, we went to Top
We're
Golf.
busy through the whole week. Exactly. we went and did something. We just hung out, and guess what? We still live God every day. Our living God isn't just on Sunday. Our living God is every day.
Yeah.
And I don't want to sit here and promote everybody, hey, you got to miss church all the, once in a while. I'm not saying that. But I'm just letting you know from my perspective and what I grew up with, I wasn't going to just be constant. I'd always heard 24/7, and mine was always 25/8. I just felt like it was all the time, every breath I breathed, that it had to be church.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, we're choosing a way of raising our kids, and it's still Jesus first.
Yeah.
But we're going to make sure it's done right in the home first.
Well, you got to have it as a foundation.
That's right.
You're building a house. You're building a future. You're building a family. Yeah. You can't do it on a weak foundation.
Not at all.
And if God is your foundation, he's going to honor that. And I've seen people, and my perspective of it has always been, you take that time.
Yeah.
Like everyone's got a busy week, and you always got to make time for God. There is always time. There's always
absolutely
bits that we can go throughout our day to make more time for
totally.
God.
I agree.
But you got to make time for family too.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying to put that above God, but God is still going to honor that. So like, there's no issue. I tell some of my staff, I'm like, hey, if you don't want to be here on like a Sunday, and you want to go spend time with your spouse or your family, you go out to lunch or brunch or whatever.
Sure.
Do that, because you never get to do that.
No.
Because you're working, their family's working. Like,
right.
Go do that, and God is still going to honor that.
Yeah.
No, that doesn't mean every week, obviously.
No, I get what you're saying. Sure. I think that's it made me think, because there was a time when we were I believe Chris and Dawn were the youth pastors here. It was during that time, and I had a lot of my friends, like even yourself included, that were on staff there. And there was times that I'd even felt, and that's when we really started pulling away on Wednesdays. And I'll explain myself here, but we'd gone so much on Sundays and Wednesdays for so many years. And I kind of felt like I got looked at as to, why am I not helping in the youth? Everyone else is helping in the youth. Why aren't you down here helping in the youth? Well, I served my time.
Yeah.
And I did. And it was from like 18 till I forgot how many years I stayed in helping with that. And then we would just kind of spend our Wednesday nights even at home, because we've had a busy week. We wanted to spend time with the kids. We're big on having dinner around the table. We discuss life and discuss school. And I just felt like that was sometimes during that season, I got kind of some looks from people and some words I would hear that, where you guys at?
Yeah.
I'm like, well, we're doing fine. We're doing great. And thank you for checking on us. I appreciate that. But I don't have to be everywhere all the time, because my family is the pastor.
Well, and I also don't need the guilt trip. Right. That's the other thing too, because some people will guilt trip you into it, and like, I don't guilt trip me, because that's the fastest way to get me to do the opposite of what you want.
That's exactly right. That'll preach, man. That's so true.
I just couldn't stand it, and sometimes there'd be days when I would miss, or I'd miss a week or two in a row, and then just like, oh, you're just not coming anymore? I'm like, no, I got stuff going on. Like,
see, I've always had that saying, 2 weeks missing of church is like 2 months to people that are in church.
Right.
That's usually how it is. They're like, You've been gone a while. I've been gone 2 Sundays.
Yeah.
I'm
Not to mention I've been here Wednesday. I went to an event on Friday. I was here Tuesday helping out build some stuff down here.
Look, doing some dramas on Friday, you know, or whatever it was, right?
So it's like, oh, because I don't see you for an hour on Sunday, therefore I am now a heretic and you're going to burn me at the cross.
Right. I wasn't your check mark for, I attended service this week and God's going to, put a gold star by my name up there in the Lamb's Book of Life. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
So
it's the whole star chart from
It
New
is.
Hope.
Oh my gosh. It's so true, man.
Yeah. No, it's interesting because, it's like people just don't understand that it's not just a Sunday thing and a Wednesday thing. There are days like I was here last night till about 8:30 putting panels on the stage.
It's ministry.
And that's just what it is. It's like, when can I fit this in?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, I've got other obligations. I want to make sure that I make time for my friends and, things like that. And I try to sometimes cross those streams like, hey, come help me work on a thing. We'll hang out and go get food afterwards.
Right.
And, I try to do that. But ultimately, it's not a sin to take care of yourself.
You almost got to look at, and I think you made a good point, because you almost got to look at then what's your definition of ministry? That's almost like kind of what you've got to ask that person. Well, what are you expecting of me then? Because I'm thinking you and I might have a difference of opinion on what ministry really is. Yeah. Is ministry showing other people that I'm in church? Or is ministry servanthood unto God in ways that I know what's best to do or what God's gifted me with? You know what I'm saying? And that's not just on a Sunday when I do it.
Right.
I go and do it through the week in other forms and other fashions.
Yeah, because they think that, you can only get worship and church at church.
Right.
And like, no, I can also worship through my actions. I can also praise through my actions.
Absolutely.
I can also minister to people through my actions.
Totally.
Even if it's just going to help somebody move or, I don't do that too much anymore because I can't move too much. But it's stuff like that. Like,
it is.
I'll go rent a truck and I'll just be like, hey, just fill it up and we'll go and we'll take it wherever.
Yeah.
And, I'll do what I can.
Yeah.
But people don't look at that, oh, well, you weren't here Sunday, so it doesn't count.
It's interesting. See, it just must be a God thing, because the things you're saying, it makes me think of points to go along with that. Is I feel like that's how I am with. I feel like God's kind of called me to be to be there for people when others have left, or when, like, say maybe someone has lost a loved one and life has gone on. I like to be the one to call or text and go, hey, how you doing? Doing all right?
Yeah.
You doing fine? I just want to let you know you're thought about. I want to just let you know you were on my mind.
Yeah.
This is stuff that's done behind the curtain. I don't have to have a spotlight on me to do that.
Never.
I'm doing it for God. I'm doing it for the person.
Right.
And I don't need a praise or a pat on my back and let people know that I'm doing that.
Never.
So, I mean, that's just kind of what I feel like. I like reaching out to people when I feel like I'm supposed to.
Well, and even if you do stuff for other people, regardless of what it is, if you're expecting something in return, you're not doing a kindness, you're doing business.
That's right.
And there's a transaction there. And now you get your reward here. Right. And it's a pat on the back and an attaboy. And I can't spend that.
Is that what Jesus did?
No.
Not at all.
No.
Not
and
at all.
It's, I don't know. Some people have this skewed vision of ministry. And they also, like, you said, like, taking a step back and just kind of soaking in. Like, you can't pour from an empty cup. And the ideal way to do it is to let God pour into you so much that it overflows into other cups.
That's right.
You're not supposed to, like, tip your own cup or poke little holes in it to fill other people.
No.
You've got to make sure that you're in a place to where you're constantly getting that fresh oil.
Yes. Absolutely. That's why anytime I would ever speak, or times that I felt like God would want me to speak, I don't want to just speak to people that I just assume they know everything I know. I want it laid so low, and it's no disrespect to anybody that's out there listening, but I want them to understand what I'm saying, and I want them to understand maybe the story that I'm saying, and just assume that they know everything about ministry or about the Bible or about Jesus. Or you bring a name up and you're like, oh, you know the story. Well, they may not.
Yeah.
Lay it out for them.
Right.
People need that.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
I do that with the kids sometimes. I'll be like, who's heard of, Job? And then, like, nobody raised their hands. I'm like, cool, we're going to talk about a very depressing thing today.
Which is kind of funny, just to add to that. Job is my favorite. I watched one of your podcasts and seen some of your favorite people or favorite characters that were named. And actually, Job is mine.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I did see your comment because you're talking about, like, the people that just went and sat with him and just.
It's my favorite story, man.
That is
through the Bible,
dude. Sometimes there's nothing you can say. There's nothing you can do.
Sat there for 7 days. Nobody do study on that, people. 7 days they sat in the dirt and no one said a word.
Yep.
You just got to sit in the dirt with people sometimes.
Just the presence.
They just got to know you're there.
Yeah.
want to know you're there. So yeah, he's my favorite. So
because that's really cool. I did read that. I did see that comment. No, that's man, we just went on that whole tirade of ministry, dude. That's just how it goes.
You never know where it's gonna head, right?
Yeah. And you know, I know that a lot of people mean well. I know that they do. Totally. I'm not one of these people that believe there's a majority of malicious people out there that are just out to get you.
Not at all.
I believe that people mean well, but I don't believe that they have the means to do well.
Sure. Or maybe know how to communicate it.
Right.
I completely agree. Absolutely.
Because a lot of it's just regurgitated stuff from our forefathers, like things we've seen.
Oh my gosh.
Mannerisms and phrases that we always see. You know, it's we just kind of regurgitate. We fall back onto that because we heard it so much.
Oh yes.
That it's like, oh well, no, hold on. Let's think about this critically. Let's lay out the situation beforehand before we respond with just a a proverb a day keeps the devil away. I'm like, okay, well let's put that on the shelf with the hokey stuff.
Right. But I think that's good too, because people sometimes don't know how to communicate it to you, and I have to be careful of that. Being raised in it, to not just assume in my head that, well, they're thinking they're watching me, or they may not even be thinking anything about me. I'm not as important as what I think I am sometimes, and I really have to face that in the mirror, you know, and I know it's funny, but it's true, because even the enemy will tell me that, hey, someone's watching you, or hey, they're saying that. They're probably not even caring that don't even know that I'm in the room.
Right. They've got so much of their own stuff going on. Think about how much you think of other people and like what they've got going on and how much time you spend that. And then realize that they probably think less than that about you.
It's a good point.
Because it's not about you. I've had that checked so many times. Like, it really isn't about you. It isn't about me. It isn't about what I can do. It's about being obedient.
That's it.
And
it's all obedience. Yes.
Like, I'm not trying to lay out a plan for the next 20 years. I'm like, God, what's the next command you're going to give me?
That's right. One step at a time, man.
Yeah, because I'm not looking at 20 years from now. I'm looking at what's our next step.
Sure. Yeah.
And I can't be too taken with the top of the stairs when I haven't even started on the bottom step.
Preach, brother. That's right. That's right.
No, but that's super interesting.